It's occurred to me that despite all the videos I've done regarding modifying wheels and restoring wheels, I've never actually done one on how to attach the wheels permanently once you're happy with them. So we'll use that trusty grey Porsche that's been in quite a few videos so far to demonstrate that very thing. It's the cheapo wheels that I put tyres on and painted, but I never actually cut the axles. The original axles are still there and they're too wide for the car, so the wheels can stick out a bit. You could reposition them, I suppose, but you don't want to be doing that every time you move it or whatever. It's better if they're just nice and tight to the body. So we're going to make it some new axles. So trust me, I mean, what I've got here, these are very thin brass rods. There's a bit of aluminium tubing in there as well, but there's nothing fancy, nothing pricey about these. I try to make these videos very low bar to entry. Anybody can have a go at it, so I never use anything that's expensive or hard to get hold of, or something that you need loads of fancy expensive equipment for. So there should have been some text on the screen telling you where these come from and where you can get them. Everything that I use, it's all stuff that you can get you can either easily get it over the internet, or you can easily get it in person by going and looking in shops. So there's two widths of this brass rod that we're interested in. I'm just going to refer to them as the thicker one and the thinner one. I'm not talking in measurements. Some wheels take one, some wheels take, well, some wheels will take both, some wheels will only take one. So like this that I've just held up there, that's the Matchbox 8-hole wheel. And there's other Matchbox wheels that want the thicker type. I mean, it's like I say, it's all in the text that I put over when I was showing you the rods in the first place. Hot Wheels wheels, like this little orange one, they're probably the tightest of them all. They've probably got the smallest hole out of all of them. Sometimes even to get the thinner of the two rods on, you need to assist it with pliers like this. So they take that one. I've got a few examples here. There's the sort of the kind of wire effect, not wire effect wheel, the sort of multi-spoke effect wheel that you can see down there. That's some kind of, I don't know whose that is. It's not one of the big brands, but it's very similar to a Hot Wheels wheel, and that seems to take the smaller one. But then out of the Matchbox ones that I've got here, there's the bigger one that you can see on the left, that's got like the four slots, the one I'm picking up now. That's the biggest wheel on this table, and that takes that's got the small hole, that takes the smaller rod. So the Hot Wheels, that sort of multi-spoke one that I'm just putting on now, brand unknown, and the sort of 70s, the big but quite thin 70s Matchbox 4-slot wheel, they all take that smaller hole. The other Matchbox wheel that's still on the table at the moment that I'm just about to come to, that's smaller than the other Matchbox that we've just tried, but you can see here that the thicker type of rod isn't going in that one at all, but it goes straight into this one. So this will obviously take the thinner type as well, but it's best not to. If it'll take the thicker one, use the thicker one. If not, you'll have to use the thinner one. That's the rule. There's no point fitting the thinner one into the one that'll take the thicker one, because the wheels will just be loose then. They won't feel right. They won't roll properly. So I'm just going to clip the ends off the axles for the Porsche wheels, the ones that we're doing. So that's that. So they're off. I'm only doing one axle, by the way. The other axle's already done. I already ran through all that one. So didn't stop me making any mistakes with this one, though, funnily enough. The fact that I'd already had a perfectly good practice. So the procedure is just cut a decent length of the from the brass rod. A decent length, what does that mean? I mean, you don't need to cut it twice as wide as the car is or anything like that, but just cut it wider than the car is, so you've got some room to play with on either end, because you do need to you need to put crimps at both ends. What we're trying to do is replicate the original manufacturer crimp. I can talk over this because this first attempt is a bit of an error, and it's just to demonstrate the value of making sure you don't cut your axle too short, because if you cut your axle too short, there's not a lot you can do with it, but if you cut it too long, you can easily make as many adjustments as you want. That's the beauty of it. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to replicate the original manufacturer's crimp by, really what you've got to do is just kind of crush and distort a very, very tiny end of it. So bend it round into a little bit of a J, using the nose of the pliers. If you've bent it round and you've got if you've got too much bent round, so it ends up more like a shepherd's crook, you can trim a little bit of that off, and then you just crush and mangle and crimp that bit that you've bent at the end, so that it makes a tiny little bit of a metal crimp, and that's enough. You see, we're trying this first attempt out now. We're trying it out on the different wheels, and it's working absolutely fine. The Hot Wheels one, it's kept on. It's this Matchbox one now. Absolutely, there's no way you're getting that off. It's just like the original manufacturer's crimp, really. Same with, and then we try it with the Porsche one, and it works absolutely fine. That's not what goes wrong here. Really, all that goes wrong is I just end up cutting the axle too short, because when I put it back onto the base plate to see how wide the axle actually needed to be, I just looked at how much it protruded through the other side, and then marked it with a crimp, which I then couldn't see properly. So I ended up just trimming it a little bit too short. That's happening right now. So I can still put the wheel on, I can still put a crimp on the other end. It's just that by the time it's finished, it's not actually going to be, the whole axle isn't actually going to be wide enough to go onto the car properly and still roll. As you can see now, it won't move. So that's that one. Not necessarily a waste of an axle, because if I get something with that's got a bit of a narrow body, it'll probably be alright for that. But for now, we've just got to uncrimp that one and slide the wheels off and just start again. So yeah, if you look at the end of a manufacturer's die-cast axle, what you'll see is you won't see like a definite sort of round end or ball or anything, not like you do on the really old Lesney ones from the 50s, but they're a different thing. I'll do those in a different video. You've got to tackle them in a totally different way. Anything that's not those, well, and the 60s red lines are a bit weird and difficult as well, but anything that's not those, any sort of 70s onwards, Matchbox, Hot Wheels, anybody really, you'll find that if you try to look dead down the centre of the axle, you won't really see anything that stops the wheel from coming off. It's just, you'll just notice that the very end of the axle is just very, very slightly thicker metal, and that's enough to stop the wheel from sliding off. And generally speaking, it's quite effective. I mean, yeah, you will. If you're trawling around broken up die-cast cars like I do, you'll see the odd thing that's where the wheels come off of its own accord, but it's very rare. And all we're doing is we're just like slightly, you just need a way of slightly deforming the end of the brass rod to replicate that little tiny crimp that the manufacturer puts in. And like I said, the best way to do it is just to get the very tip of the rod in the nose of the pliers and bend it round slightly, and so you're bending it so that it looks like it makes like a little tiny L or a little tiny J at the end, and then that bit, the very bit that's bent, that's the bit that you sort of crush and crimp, because brass is only soft metal, so you will be able to crush it quite easily in the pliers, and that should just leave you just that little bit of a crushed end so that the wheel won't actually slide off. So you see it several times on this video, so don't worry, because we do have to, this time we cut the axle too long and we have to make some adjustments, but that's so much better than cutting it too short, because the adjustments are very easy to do. You can just keep going back and just taking a little bit more off, a little bit more off. So the first thing I'm doing right this time, as opposed to last time, is I'm marking where it needs to be with a black pen, instead of just crimping it and then not being able to see the crimp. So there you see, you can just get the edge of the black mark into the nose of the pliers. It's always never hurts just to go back to the base and just check every now and then just pinch it between thumb and forefinger, or thumb and A finger, and then you can just bend it round the nose like that. In fact, I think what I was actually doing there was unbending it, because I'd forgotten to put the wheel on. So right, so the wheel's on there. See, I was all warning you about all these pitfalls. That is something you can also quite easily do, is just forget to put have both of the wheels on the axle when you make the crimp. So yeah, so the crimp's been remade, but it's just been pulled across it at the moment, just to check that there's enough room and to check that it's So you see I'm checking there with the other axle. So there we go, we just bend it round. Just so that you've got something that you can crush, if that makes sense. Because it's a little bit hard to just crush something that's sort of sticking upwards vertically. Whereas if it's kind of bending over almost in like a C, then you can get that, you can just about get that between the jaws of the pliers and just crush down on it. And then, see, I'm just taking a little bit off the edge there because it would have been too much. It would have made too much of a big crimp. So you'd have had a large, not large, but comparatively large and quite visible and quite obvious area of metal kind of protruding out of the wheel. So I've just cut a little bit off there. So I'm just left with this little curved bit, and then we're just crushing that little curved bit because the what's the word, the mass of the crushed area will be enough to provide that little bobble on the end of the axle that will stop the wheel from sliding off. And I'm pretty sure that's how manufacturers do it, if I'm quite honest with you. Alright, they don't do it sat at a kitchen table with some pliers. I don't suppose manufacturers are really going to do that with every single one, but they must have a machine that does it or something, because if you actually look properly at the crimp that the manufacturer's making these axles, it's not particularly tidy or neat or smooth, any more neat or smooth than the crimp that I'm making by just sort of effectively crushing some bent brass. So we just try it on again there, and we put the body back on, and then we realise when we've put the body back on that the crimp is actually protruding quite far. So I mean, it's not the end of the world, but it does defeat the object, because it means the wheel can slide out and come out too far, just like it could do on the original axles. So that makes the whole thing sort of pointless. But not only that, it's a bit unsightly. You don't want the crimp to be visible once the wheels are on, because the crimp can and should disappear completely into the centre of the wheel, so it just can't be seen. So we're just doing it again. So all we've done is we've just taken a little bit more. We've just bent a little bit more of it up, trimmed a little bit more of it off, and then we just, that same bit of curve at the end that we're left with, we're just crushing that again in the pliers, and hopefully this time we'll find that it's right. I mean, I can tell you that we don't, and we have to do it again, but this is just a good way of demonstrating how easy it is. It's to sort of get it wrong and just keep having to do it again. It's absolutely fine. Again, like a lot of my stuff, it's recorded pretty much in real time, so this is the amount of time that you'll spend, you know, even if you have to resize it twice. This video's less than 15 minutes in total. So we're just making the little bend now. Again, I mean, as you get more and more practiced at this, you'll be able to make the bends smaller and smaller and smaller, and just so you don't even need to do any trimming off. You can just put it straight into the pliers and just crush it. So you remember, you just cut your axle, you cut your length of axle, you make a very, very small bend in one end of it, the smallest bend you can, using the long nose pliers, and then you crush the bend to make this sort of little bobble that stops the wheel from sliding off. And the bobble should be small enough to be able to disappear into the middle of the wheel, so you won't see it. And then at the other end, you just keep, so one end you only really make the crimp once, and then at the other end you might make it once or twice as you adjust the width of the axle, because you just keep trying it on the base plate and just making sure that the wheel's still got enough room to rotate freely, but obviously not so much room that it can end up sticking out. In a lot of cases with Hot Wheels wheels, because they've got such a tight hole in the wheels, a lot of the time you don't even really need to make that bend. You just need to sort of crimp the actual end of the axle, and that's usually enough to keep it in. But with everything else, the bend, the tiny sort of crushed bend does seem to be necessary. So there you go, it's all done. The wheels are just, it's a very, very cheap, very easy method, but it's very kind of orthodox, so to speak, because it's just how the manufacturers do it. So there you go, it's got its wheels that they don't stick out at all, they roll freely, they roll fine, and the crimps are absolutely invisible. Thanks for watching.